There was an announcement this week by the British government and the European Commission that should finally create a system that allows goods to move between the UK and Northern Ireland and into the European Union. When Britain voted to leave the European Union in that Brexit referendum, it created a problem with Northern Ireland, which is politically part of the United Kingdom and shares a land border with the Republic of Ireland. In the past, there was no real hard border between them, although I must just tell you, this is a problem that's incredibly complicated and goes back hundreds of years. Musa Mdunge is a political analyst based at the University of Dundee in the UK. Musa, good afternoon to you. I mean, this is such a complicated problem. It risked undoing the peace deal in Northern Ireland that was struck by John Major and Tony Blair. How does this deal solve this complicated problem?
Well, yes, the issue of the Northern Ireland Protocol is a very consequential one for the United Kingdom, because what it very much deals with is the legacy of Brexit and its impact in not only the UK's ability to grow economically, but in terms of its own ambitions on a global level. And so failure by the Conservative Party to deal with this matter has really highlighted the negative impacts that Brexit has had and undermines any argument the Conservatives could make in a general election expected to be held next year. But in terms of, a more micro level of looking at this issue, what the deal does, this Windsor Framework, is it fundamentally creates two lanes of goods, and the red lane as well as the green lane. And the green lane are all goods that are moving from Great Britain to Northern Ireland will not be subject to the kind of customs regulations that fall under the European Union. And then those goods that will, at their last stop, end in Dublin, will be subject to those regulations. And it also deals with this issue of ensuring that you don't have a land border, a physical hard border between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland due to the levels of violence in Northern Ireland during the years of the Troubles. But at the same time, the issue that one has had in Great Britain is having a sea border, which fundamentally then separates Northern Ireland from the rest of the United Kingdom. And this then undermines the aspirations of the Unionists in Northern Ireland who have not subjected themselves to power sharing agreement in Northern Ireland, thus putting in suspension any active government services in Northern Ireland and undermining and threatening the integrity of the United Kingdom, which at present still faces pressure on the Scottish independence question. And this is where the United Kingdom finds itself.
So, does it mean that Brexit has happened? Or does it mean that Brexit has not happened? Or is that too political a question to answer?
Well, we're not there yet, Stephen. So what still remains, of course, for Rishi Sunak is that this Windsor Framework would need to be passed through the House of Commons, and he faces challenges in terms of that. Within his own party, the Conservative Party, we have the European Research Group that are very much strong Brexiteers who want to see the implementation of the Northern Ireland Protocol, who are fundamentally against the role of the European Court of Justice, which in fact the Windsor Framework does deal with only applying 3% of all the rules and regulations of the agreement. So, that's the challenge that he finds himself. Of course, the Labour Party will support him, but the problem with that for even Labour is that they've never really given a fundamental strong position on Brexit. And that's what hurts the Labour Party. So it's still touch and go. We're not there yet. And there's still even the question of the Democratic Unionist Party, the DUP, which, has said that it is optimistic about this deal. There are very good elements to it, but there are certain challenges that they find with the deal. And critical to that is the role of the ECJ, which they believe undermines the unity and the integrity of the United Kingdom as a sovereign state.
There's so much to this, so let me try and come at it another way. Brexit divided Britain literally in half, if you look at the referendum result. And it really raised the political temperature, a lot like what we see between the Democrats and the Republicans in the United States. Lots of similarities. Has some of the heat gone out of that argument? Has Brexit stopped dividing people in the way that it did?
Well, in fact, it has stopped dividing people in the way that it did only in the result of more people supporting reunification with the European Union. So, and this is because of the economic challenges that the United Kingdom has faced. We know that this year alone, the United Kingdom is expected to do far worse than even Russia, which is facing a mounting challenge of sanctions against its economy. And many people locate the reason for Britain's poor performance economically, even though we've come from a place of COVID-19, even though it has little or no control over Russia's invasion in Ukraine and the subsequent impact on energy prices. But the very fact that Brexit shifted the structure of the United Kingdom's economy is seen as the core reason for why it is where it is. And so for the Conservative Party, this is an issue that is a headache for it, because it goes into the next general election without the confidence that Brexit actually worked out or is going to work out. And divisions within the Conservative Party around Brexit are also what has driven its inability to sell the legacy of Brexit and the work it has done in the past 13 years of power. And so it allows an opportunity for the Labour Party to step in after 13 years of being outside of number 10 Downing Street, to get back in there and perhaps salvage the United Kingdom's influence in Europe, or, which I don't think is likely, propose another referendum. Of course, we must not only think about these things in terms of division, but the implication about the unity of the United Kingdom. And so Scotland becomes a question, Northern Ireland becomes a question, and even Wales, funny enough, we are hearing more voices calling for independence, even in a place such as that.
It's so interesting, Musa, because you had an issue which divided people. The issue sort of is decided, and then everybody kind of changes their mind. I mean, that happens in politics. It's actually the second time there's been a referendum in the UK on Brexit, on the European Union, because there was a referendum to go into it in the 1970s. So the point I'm trying to get to is that societies, and we've seen particularly in many democracies, Brazil, the United States, the UK, Italy, there's this rise of populism, right? Is the wave of populism in Brexit over? And if so, does that mean that democracies can survive populism sometimes?
Well, look, democracies can survive populism, but what it takes within those democracies is the maturity of their institutions, and to still have men and women who would stand up for the constitutional integrity that democracy needs in order to survive. But in terms of whether this is the end of the populist wave in the United Kingdom, unfortunately that is not the case. Within the Conservative Party, Boris Johnson still holds dreams and visions of returning to number 10 Downing Street. And so he is leading the caucus within the Conservative Party that are calling for a stronger position by the United Kingdom, and are calling for no compromise when it comes to the handling of Brexit, and also are seeking to influence foreign policy, may I add, through, the kind of support the United Kingdom must give Ukraine in the war. We've heard Boris Johnson calling on Rishi Sunak to supply the Ukrainian armed forces with, in fact, jets in order to mount a sophisticated air attack or defense against Russia. And so given his popularity, even internationally, given that matter, he remains a thorn in the side of Rishi Sunak. And so the populist voices are still there and still could upend what is surprisingly might be a positive period in the life of Rishi Sunak's premiership in the United Kingdom.
Musa Mdunge, as always, thank you. Political analyst based at the University of Dundee in the UK.